Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President of Dale Carnegie Training, Tokyo, Japan. My special guest today is an old friend of mine, Nikolaus Boltze, who is the country representative for Thyssenkrupp in Japan. Nikolaus, welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much
good to see you
for being here.
So, Nikolaus, you've actually been in Japan a long time. I know that because I saw the recent article for Eurobiz, and when you were a young man here, your parents had been here. So I can't remember whether you were born here or you grew up here, but let's pick up the story a little bit about your background in Japan, and particularly how it is that you came to be leading your company in Japan.
Well, I have been here first in 1972 as an elementary school student. My father at that time was working at the embassy, and so definitely I joined them. And this was my first experience here in Japan. So I attended here the German school, which was at that time in Ōmori. And since this time, I have a certain favor for Japan.
As we all do. Let me just stop there. I want you to just bring your chair in a bit closer, to get closer to that mic.
Yeah, okay.
That would be better, sorry. So I'll just pick that up. Pick it up. So, 72, did you go through elementary, junior, high school here, or back to...
No, actually, it was only for a 2-year assignment.
Oh, okay.
Then we returned in the early 80s, and I did my graduation at the German school here in Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
And afterwards, I went back for university and for military service back to Germany.
Right. And so what about working in Japan? When did you come back to Japan to work?
Well, the unique part is I started for a Japanese company in Germany, actually, my corporate career.
First job?
First job.
Wow, okay.
And it was a company from Osaka. So for them, I came here for a training program, half a year, in the early 90s before going back to their Munich office and working at their Munich office.
So, I think you did, was it engineering?
Yeah.
So you studied engineering university, right?
Correct.
So you've got that, I presume you could speak Japanese, having lived here by that number of years? Well, probably more than other Germans around you, other German engineers. So, but your thinking was, okay, I want to reconnect with Japan. Was that what you were thinking, to choose a Japanese company, or they were doing something particularly interesting from an engineering point of view?
No, the challenge was after finishing university, I was applying at various companies, as you were doing, to find a good job as a junior engineer with all your aspirations of, find the new design, the innovative design. And actually, this Japanese company was starting their operations in Europe, and they're offering in their job description was the widest variety, from setting up an office, finding additional staff, reaching out first to new customers in Germany, transferring the products, which had an excellent Japanese design, but make them fit for the European market and so on. So it was for a young engineer without any previous experience, it was absolutely great. And it was much more than just designing the rear back wheel for a Mercedes Benz or something like this, which would be the typical start position for a young engineer.
So what was the name of that Osaka company?
Daifuku.
Daifuku?
Yep.
Okay, a big company.
It's a company in material handling, and we were focusing on the European car industry at that time.
Wow, okay.
To make the assembly shop, the weld shop, paint shop, to bring the body from one assembly station to the next. Right.
And how long were you in Daifuku?
For 92, 97, for 5 years.
5 years, okay.
5 years.
And during that time in the 5 years, were you ever in a stage where you're actually running a team or supervising any people, or you were an engineer in a group of engineers working in the company?
We were a 3-person office.
So you were doing everything, in other words? Yeah.
No. I had a Japanese boss.
Okay.
And a Japanese administrator. But I was the only one speaking German. Okay. So I was the face to the customer,
Yep.
and they kept the head office happy.
Right,
So at that time, they were sending the faxes in the evening.
Yes.
What's going on, what we need. And on the other side, we had a lot of German customers, and they were always approaching me, of course, in German, and said, we need this, we need that, this information, and so on. So I was the transferring the bridge
Right.
between the headquarter in Osaka and the European customers.
Good training for what you're doing now too, isn't it? As country
Exactly.
representative, right? It's
So
exactly the same.
It's
rotation,
exactly the
isn't it?
same the other way around.
Yeah.
So I'm fully aware of the challenges
Yeah.
you
how it
might
can
have.
work.
Yeah.
And so you're there for 5 years,
Yep.
and then what happens after that?
I took a new position in a German automotive supplier in Stuttgart, and they were looking for a project manager Japan.
Oh.
So that sounds interesting, at least in the advertisement. So I went there for an interview, and they explained to me, well, we have a strong position, number one position in Germany in the area of air conditioning and engine cooling. We are strong in Europe, we are strong in the US, but we never mastered the Japanese OEMs. And we all know Japanese car industry is approximately 1/3 of the global car production. So you have to take care of them in order to get a certain piece of the cake. And I asked them, so how did you do this? And they said, oh, well, in the past we did this travel to Japan, we attended the Tokyo Motor Show and so on. Afterwards we went back, but never something happened. And I said, oh, no wonder.
Yeah,
if you have,
surprise.
if you have no presence in Japan, this will be not successful. So they hired me. And my first year I spent in developing a strategy for the market entry into Japan. And we all know there are these various opportunities or options you have. So either traveling, finding a Japanese partner, make a joint venture, take over an existing company here, make a greenfield operation. Well, there's a wide range of possibilities on how to tackle the Japanese market. And I presented this to the board. And at the end, they said, okay, sounds reasonable. And the last question was, are you willing to implement your own strategy? I mean, are you willing to go to Japan and really try it out? And of course, immediately I said, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for.
You were probably, what, about 20, 28?
No. I was 20, more 30.
Close to 30.
Yeah,
So relatively, in business terms, still fairly young. I mean, to be given the responsibility to go and launch into a big market like Japan, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, but starting from zero. I mean, we have to be realistic. I was the first person going here, and my job was to first find a secretary, find an office. And actually, I started here in this JETRO incubation office, which was, I think, one or two buildings
from here.
From here. So where I really tried to connect and build up my network. So the first one was a Japanese secretary. And
what was the name of this company you're working for?
Bear.
Yep.
It's no longer, it's a family-owned company in Stuttgart, and it was taken over by Mahle, who is an engine part component manufacturer in Germany.
And so how long were you with them?
And I did this until 2005.
So how many years is that? It's about what? 5?
Approximately 6 years, yeah.
5, 6 years.
Yep.
So, you're coming here, you've lived in Japan, you've been, grown up a little bit here. But, speaking elementary school, middle school, high school, level Japanese, business Japanese, a little bit different. You had your 5 years with your Daifuku, your first company. So you're sort of learning the ropes of how Japanese business works, but still, relatively speaking, it's probably quite a big challenge. So how did you go about convincing people to join a brand new operation in Japan when there's always that, okay, we like precedent, we like a success story to join rather than be part of the success story, we don't like risk. Is this going to be one of those cases where the foreigners give up after 2 years because they're not making enough profits like we see all the time? I mean, how did you overcome that to actually get people to come on board?
We have never been really successful in hiring graduates directly from university for various reasons. We were always successful, I really got really good stuff from Japanese engineers or salespeople who went overseas for a Japanese company, who worked in the US, in Europe, in Southeast Asia, returned to Japan and didn't feel well in their being back to Japan environment. So these mid-career people who have been overseas speaking English have seen that there is some world outside Japan, outside the island of Japan, coming back and said, well, I would like to challenge and I would like to work for a foreign company. We have never really been successful with, as I said, with university graduates, because you're right, they are focusing primarily on the Japanese well-known companies. They also have a family in their back who are looking that he or she is working for a respectable, well-known Japanese brand. And the other thing where we have been successful is Japanese female engineers who feel sometimes limited in a Japanese company. And I told them, for us, it's equal. If you're an engineer, you're an engineer, and we don't care about gender. And yes, you can become team leader or whatever. And meanwhile, foreign people, Korean, Taiwanese, Malaysia, who came to Japan for studying here, who are rather fluent in Japan, who have a degree from a Japanese university, but afterwards are more happy to or more comfortable to work in a foreign company and not in a Japanese. And so we have a multinational team. Yeah.
So how big did Bayer get in the 6 years you were with them?
Bayer grew up to approximately 25.
25, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically responsible for recruiting them all. Were you the country representative for Bayer in Japan?
Yeah.
So this is your first country responsibility. You're, again, doing all that headquarter liaison.
Exactly.
Recruiting people, leading people.
And we had, which was maybe also important, we had two joint venture partners here. One for the air conditioning side and one for the engine cooling side. So two Japanese partners where we did most of our operative business, actually.
Right. So, you're working through them, I guess.
Yeah.
They've got the client.
Yeah.
You've got the expertise. So
Correct.
you're fitting it together.
Yeah.
So what were some of the challenges you bumped into in that very first opportunity to lead in Japan? It's something your own creation too. It's your baby. You created it. What were some of the challenges you had with leading people?
To get the message across, to get the intention of the headquarter into the mind of the people.
Why was that difficult? What was so hard about that?
Well, here you have sometimes the understanding, well, the customer is always right, and if the customer is asking for this, we have to supply this, and we have to provide him this, and there is no discussion. And on the other side, especially our proud German engineers, are the country where cars are going without any speed limit, where we have the Autobahn, where we are the inventor of the car anyway, and we know everything better, are trying, okay, now you have to discuss it. You have to go to Toyota, let's take them as an example, and argue with them and discuss it with them, and we have to push through our solution, which we developed some 10 years ago, and this is the only thing which will fit, and everything else is not working. And so this kind of mismatch of the customer-supplier situation, and of course this happens also in our office. I mean, on the broader scale, it happens between our company in Germany and the company here in Japan. But the battlefield was more or less in our office, where our engineers were asked by their counterparts from overseas to do this and to do that, and were given clear instructions, polite as they are. They were not able immediately to counter-react and to say, no, that's not the Japanese way, and we have to take a different approach. I understand your point, but we cannot do it in this harsh, direct way you would like to do it. So I was always in the middle, building bridges between the requirements on one side, which I understood. Often there were also additional costs involved, and then these things are getting tricky. And on the other side, the Japanese staff in the office trying to protect the Japanese customer, not losing the face, keeping the time schedule, keeping the budget, all these restraints we had.
Quite a tricky balance, that, isn't it? Yeah.
It's the ongoing battle we all have here. And I believe this is one of the reasons why you still need foreigners here in your Japanese subsidiary. There's always the question, how many foreigners do you need here in order to run the operations? Is one enough? Should this be the sales positions? Should this be the CFO, the CEO? So we always have this question. And as we all know, we are not cheap. And the question is always, why don't we do it with a pure Japanese team?
So you after 6 years, you decide to move. And so this is when you joined Thyssenkrupp?
Yeah.
So
actually, they asked me to return to Germany. I was on an expat contract at that time, and they said, so 5 years is long, 6 years is the maximum. Please consider to come back.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because if you think about it from a company point of view, having someone like you who's grown up in Japan, speaks Japanese, understands how Japan works, okay, they're going to pull you out. Great. Who are they going to be able to put in with that degree of expertise and understanding and insight? And just because they have maybe some company regimen around your rotation or time in the market or whatever in Japan, is also a long play. It's not a short-term play. So I always find that confusing that companies choose to do that, but I get it. And so obviously Thyssenkrupp was a great company to join as well.
So actually, I have to be fair. I was prepared to return. And actually, my successor was a French-German guy. And at that time, Nissan Renault came up. And they said, it's good if we... And he was the previous key account manager for Renault.
Okay.
So I think it was not a bad decision to say, okay, if our main customer would be Nissan Renault at that time, and
put the guy in.
To send a French guy
right.
Who was keeping the French side of these.
With Nissan, that makes sense.
It's a reasonable decision. And to answer your question, why going to Thyssenkrupp? Actually, I have to say, a headhunter was calling.
Yeah, really.
Was calling and asked me if I would be interested in doing the same what I'm doing for Bayer. I mean, running here the automotive business for Thyssenkrupp.
So what year is this now?
2005.
2005, right?
Yeah.
So you've been running it since that period of time.
Yeah.
So obviously Thyssenkrupp doesn't have any idea about moving you, which is smart. And so did you take over an established business for Thyssenkrupp in Japan?
Yeah. We had Thyssenkrupp, or Krupp actually, is active here since more than 160 years.
Long time.
So extremely long time.
Yep.
It was an established business, but at that time only responsible for the automotive part.
Right.
And we had a good elderly Japanese president who was doing this, and he was short of retiring, and they were looking for a replacement. But they made the decision at that time we would like to have a German person there with whom we could communicate directly and be a little bit more pushy in building up the Japanese automotive
And how
market.
big was the company when you joined?
Oh, this was only the automotive part, 15 people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So quite small.
Quite small. Our intention was never to sell too much in Japan, but to sell to the Japanese car industries in their transplants.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
the idea is, and that's where we made the business actually, where the turnover was made in Europe, in
Right.
the UK, where there is at that time the Toyota, Honda, Nissan, or in the US, or even in South America, where there are the Japanese transplants. The decision and the projects are identified here at the headquarters.
Right.
And once the design is finished, the whole project is then given to the local team.
So this is type of getting into that design-in stage before they go to any sort of production.
So the certification
Yeah.
and the approvals have to be done here. And once
Right.
the technical center is happy, the blueprint is sent over and produced somewhere else.
So what was it like going from having basically created the organization in Japan for Bayer
Yeah.
to taking over an existing operation in Japan? What was challenging about that?
Definitely to get to know the people, who's doing what, listening careful, what are the challenges, what are the hurdles, where can I help, where can I support? Because they were running the operations before. So they definitely knew basically what to do. So, and I was new in the Thyssenkrupp network worldwide. So I traveled a lot to listen to our plants and to our operative people doing the real business. What are their challenges? How much spare capacity do they have? What are they expecting from a Japanese customer? What are they expecting here from the Japanese market, to get the understanding what the shareholder would like to do? And then on the other side, transforming these into some strategies and sharing these strategies here with the team to say, for this product, we would like to grow. For that product, we have a certain margin problem. Somehow our cost structure is not correct, so we have to do something here. This product is not known in Japan. We have to start some kind of marketing initiative. So really to go through product by product and to decide what has to be done in order to stabilize and to grow the business. Or could be also for some products to decide, well, they do not fit to the Japanese market, no need for further investing in this, and we will give it up.
And over time, your role basically expanded, I guess.
And then over time, the role expanded for various facts that are so we were always a group of companies here. 5 to 6 individual small entities, all under one roof. I think you have seen our old office. And especially after the earthquake 2011, several of my German colleagues said, no, thank you, we are returning for good. And I inherited more or less their jobs. We merged various companies. Of course, Thyssenkrupp being such a big company, we are in a constant restructuring. So we merged several companies, and only one management was necessary. So it was a little bit like inheriting other companies. And once in a while, I was asked if I would like to do it under an umbrella, to have some kind of country holding here, being responsible for.
And that's not so easy, is it? Because when you are running a matrix type of organization where those units have got a reporting line somewhere external, and then you're here, you've got a reporting line to you too, but it's often a dotted line,
correct,
not the straight line. So you're sort of in control, but you're not really 100% in control because they've got another boss. So how did you work your way around doing that in Japan? Like many companies globally have that matrix structure. But how did you find that worked in Japan?
You can only, in my opinion, do it by intensive networking on all sides. In Japan, call it nemawashi or some kind of informal talks, because it's much easier to talk to the people here. You can meet them due to the close distance, so it's easy to have a cup of coffee. And then being quite often back to the headquarters in Germany and talking to their individual bosses or operative units as well, and really trying to offer something to help, trying to offer to support, and not to dictate something. And it's a difficult question, and it's very much depending on each own personality. But in our company, even the board is not really forcing anyone to do something.
Oh, really?
Except so as long as the figures are correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to make this small,
I was going to say, that was very
small
generous.
important
Yeah.
restriction.
Yeah.
But as long as an independent small unit, you are providing to the well-being of the company. You are very independent in what you can do, and this is starting with the company logo, with the naming of the company, and there are only very few items where we are strict and say, well, this you have to do, and as long as you are a family member of Thyssenkrupp. But in order being here, it can be only a combination of knowing the Japanese culture, knowing their pain points, and on the other side, being German, being able to speak to their bosses as well, to be somehow the man in the middle.
Your father was a diplomat, so you must have inherited some genes there from Dad.
Yeah.
Because that's quite a diplomatic role, isn't it? Balancing out all those different interests. So, if you think back over your time in Japan, running organizations here, running teams, what have been some things that you've found which you've seen work well in terms of getting people engaged in their work?
It's always good if you have a success story.
Okay.
Why
does that feature so importantly?
No, I mean, if you can show them that a similar approach already worked in a previous project, it's always easy to convince them. It's difficult to say, I have a dream and this should be like this, and let's take a white piece of paper and then we will work out a concept. Is not good here. People.
Now, is that a contrast between engineers generally? Is that a contrast with Japan and other countries? If you had that, let's get out a blank sheet of paper and start again approach in Germany, for example, or America, or somewhere else, so we go, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. Or is that the Japanese fear of failure, love of precedent, love of something that's already been tested to keep their risk reductions? Yeah. Is that a Japan thing, or is that an engineer thing?
No, I believe maybe it's an engineer thing as well, but it's a specific Japan thing. If you ask someone here to take out a white piece of paper and design something completely out of the blue, it's rather difficult, and they are asking for instructions. They are asking for a guidebook, they are asking for a procedure, for a manual.
Give me the manual.
Give me the manual and I will do it.
Yeah.
On the other side, and this is maybe the weak point, at least in German engineering, that we have great ideas, sometimes very innovative, but they are only half-baked and maybe 80% ready. And in a very early stage, we are already announcing them to the market and say, hey, here we have the new innovative solution for all your problems and so on. And it's okay, but it's not yet industrialized. And if you combine then the strengths of the Japanese with their attention to detail and really thinking through all steps until the part is really packed and shipped out to the customer, that's the best way. To get an idea from somewhere else, but don't wait for your team to come up with a complete new idea. Get the idea from somewhere else and then bring it to Japan and ask them to optimize it, to make it ready, that it be accepted by Japanese customers. And for us, Japanese customers is the highest level in customer satisfaction, in reliability, in quality, all these items. And once such a product is ready to be sold on the Japanese market, no problem to sell it in the rest of the world.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. Interesting, isn't it? Like, you often have that contrast that in the West, we get into thinking about the solution, focus on the solution. And in Japan, often they're focused on what's the right question. We should be asking ourselves. You know, it's a different starting point. So in terms of, taking engagement, because engagement is very critical. So you've talked a little bit about engagement. What other things did you find worked in getting people engaged around their work?
You have to be convinced by what you are asking.
Yourself, you have to be self-convinced. Okay.
This is very, very important. And sometimes we have some stupid or not fitting requests coming from the headquarters, which is a very nice and a very fitting request, let's say, for Germany, but absolutely not fitting for the Japanese environment. These are some items. It's very difficult to convince the team here to get their buy-in if they feel, well, Mr. Boltze, you see by yourself, this doesn't fit to Japan. So you have to be realistic. You have to be convinced by yourself that this is really the right way to go and the right solution.
So basically, you as the leader have to make that decision that, okay, Germany's very keen on this, headquarters very keen on this. It's not exactly right for Japan, but I think we can tweak it or we can make it fit. Let's go with it. Or you make the decision, I've got to go back to Germany and tell them, forget it. It's just not going to work here. So you're really leading the charge there on their behalf as their representative back to headquarters. And
I can do it because I'm German. I can go back and say, look, wonderful idea, and I'm sure you will have a lot of fun with it, but please understand this color scheme which you are asking us to use is not fitting to the Japanese culture, or this kind of design is simply not acceptable here for various reasons. And you need some good reasons, and but this is then my job to protect the team here for any unrealistic requirements, and to say to the German guys, I understand where you come from, I understand your intention, but please let us do it in a different way here. Of course, this has to be balanced. On the other side, out of question, there are so and so many cases where the Japanese team says, no, this is impossible. Or they say, it's very difficult.
Which means impossible.
And then you have to...
when I dealt with Australians who are exporters trying to get in the Japanese market, you learnt you couldn't tell them, oh, it's going to be difficult, because the translation in the meeting from the client would be, it's going to be difficult. And if you translate it as difficult to them, their brain is going, no problem. We're used to difficulty. We'll find a way through.
Correct.
You had to translate it as the client says it's impossible.
I mean,
they go, oh.
I mean, this is also one of these challenges. If you find someone here, let's say a new recruit, a new candidate, who is obviously speaking good English, you are not allowed to assume that he also has a Western mindset.
No.
And just speaking the language doesn't mean that you are communicating on the same level.
No.
And all these typical Japanese phrases like, yeah, well, it's difficult, or saying yes for just conveying, I'm still with you, I hear what you say, but I do not agree automatically. All these items.
Yeah.
A lot of my time where I'm translating this between our German or Western delegations coming here, going to a customer, and
how about the case where Japanese team are risk averse? They don't want to be embarrassed in front of the client. They don't want to push the client. They rather protect the client. Even sometimes it feels a bit too protective. But you believe, no, this could work, this could play out. The German side is actually onto something here. If we think into the future, this is perhaps where we're going to be going. Maybe we're early, maybe we're not, but you actually believe it. In that case, how do you get them to come on board to also believe it when their initial thought is your job, Nikolaus, is to go back to Germany and tell them to forget it, not to tell us to make it happen? How do you get around that sort of issue?
As I said, I'm not accepting any no from their side.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm very sure that we have an idea, that we have a product which is fitting and which will do the task, I'm not shy to bring it myself to the client, or to push it through by myself. And I said, okay, I understand you are not 100% convinced of it, but I still believe it's okay. And I, as a gaijin, as a foreigner, have a certain freedom, so I can do it. You are not losing your face.
Right.
I will approach and I will try by myself.
Do you take them with you, or you go on your own?
Depending very much. That's a quick. No, I would go on my own, basically.
Why is that?
Not to embarrass anyone.
Okay.
And at the end, the client can say then to the salesman and judge, your stupid boss was here and made a completely stupid idea. So then I know, okay, it was not successful. Or, and this happened as well, they said, well, your boss was meeting my boss and he proposed something like this. Sounds interesting. Can you give us more information?
Right. So that's a nice.
So it goes in both ways. It goes in both ways. And I'm coming back. The German side or the Western side sometimes have an 80% ready idea.
Yeah.
And they like already to pitch it to a customer in order to get, let's say, first orders or some kind of advanced advantage to be the first on the market. And this is something which the Japanese team will never do. If they do not understand 100% what they are selling and where to get it and what is the experience, they are so risk averse. They will never bring it to a customer.
Yeah, I found myself too with if I go with my team members to client meetings, I have to tell them before the meeting. I said, look, if we get to a point in the meeting where it gets a bit tense, a bit of tension in the air because I've asked something, you do not speak. Do not reduce the tension by speaking, because I will have done that for a reason, to ask a question, to get them to really make the next move. And so I will ask the question and then I will shut up and I'll sit there forever if I have to. I will not speak. There's a certain amount of tension in the room. But I found in the past with my Japanese team members, they can't take the tension. So they will suddenly say something and then all the tension's gone, and I'm building to get an example from the client of why they don't want to do it or why they can do it. And that whole opportunity just disappears on the spot. So I'm very cautious when I take my own people with me, because I know that will come up. As a foreigner, I've got a little bit more margin.
Exactly.
I can push a bit harder.
So
I can ask something a bit more uncomfortable and get away with it. And they can't. They have a lot of trouble sitting there listening to that, watching the client, So yeah, interesting. In terms of one of the things about innovation, though, is getting the team engaged. If the team are not engaged, they don't care about the innovation part because, if they don't care, they don't care. So first stage is to have people engaged. If you've got them engaged, then they care and they're interested to do innovation. Now, it may be innovation in the way the product is explained, or it may be the design, or it may be the after sales, or it might be a numbers. There's more than just R&D, strict R&D on product. There's innovation in its broad sense. What have you found works well for your teams, your Japanese teams here, to become innovative? How have you found ways to get them to think in innovative terms?
So first of all, we do not have the real basic research and development here in Japan. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a mistake, I don't know, but we do not have this function here. Mm-hmm. So we are not really designing or innovate something from a white piece of paper. All the products or all the ideas, all the patents are coming from overseas. The people with a longer service period, several years in our company, are quite well integrated into multinational global teams. And that's working. So they do not have to work on their own. They do not have to work alone in Japan to be creative. But there are certain committees or regular round tables or so where new ideas are discussed. And then they are part of a bigger team, a part of a bigger group. And this is where they can contribute from their side.
And do they speak up? Because often, I've been in these meetings, and the Japanese are in the meeting, but they never say a word. They're worried about their English. They're worried about people laugh at their idea. They're worried their colleagues will think they're getting a bit above themselves. There's a whole bunch of things occupying the Japanese mind, which as an Aussie, I never have any of that baggage. I'm just like, I've got a great idea. Boom, put it on the table. Don't think about who's in the room in terms of hierarchy, who's older than me, who joined the company before me, blah, blah, blah. That's just not there for me, but it's certainly there for them. So how do you get around that problem?
I gave up. Most likely, if they are in the room with an American, with a native American speaker, I think this is absolutely a difference, and this person will always speak first, will be louder, will be easier heard compared to the Japanese. And you can only do this in setting the agenda and making sure at the end there is a conclusion and everybody again has a chance to say something or so. But I believe it's impossible. Well, you are actually in this training business.
We should talk more about that. Right?
to get a traditional Japan-educated person to compete verbally against a native speaker American. It's very difficult, and I don't know how much efforts you should spend on this one. I'm just making sure that they understand everything, that they are fully informed, and that at least at the end or so, they again have a chance to speak up again or hand in their concerns or their inputs in a written form or whatever, so that it's absolutely clear that they are heard. But if you are just taking a discussion, or now by using Zoom, it's very easy to make these international groups. It's very difficult to bring them on the same level as some other countries.
Yeah, that's right. It's not impossible, but I think you've got to have a mindset shift there for a start, and also to have a level of assertiveness that is not necessarily a natural play in a culture which basically you push yourself down all the time. Can be done, I guess. In terms of, if we think about what have you found works well in Japan to build trust with the team?
As I said, you have to be convinced of what you're doing. You have to be reliable, and you have to be...
What does being reliable mean?
Reliable means that for them, you are, let's say, the German, the Western representative. But they must have the feeling that they can come with all their concerns, ideas for improvement, and so on to you. That you are listening to them, and that at the end maybe you are the speaker for them, because you know how to do it. You know how to speak German, how to compete, to survive in a German company. And if you take up their problems, evaluate them, structure them, and say, I will take care at least that you're getting an answer. I'm not always sure that I can solve your problem completely as you would like to have it, but at least you will get an answer on your issue. We cannot follow 100%, but maybe here or here is an intermediate way or so. So that they have the feeling you are not just here coming in, going out, and forget about everything, which happens sometimes if you're here just by traveling. As soon as the doors are closed at Haneda Airport, everything is gone, and all the promises you made are forgotten because you are again engaged into your daily routine coming back to Europe. So this is listening, and do not overpromise to find a solution, but in every case coming back after a few days, after a few weeks, and said, okay, I've considered this, I have talked to various people, we came to this and this conclusion, and we can offer you this kind of solution. And if you do this several times, I hope it's increasing the trust and the reputation. The worst thing is to say, oh, write me a memo and I will take care about it later, and then never come back.
Never doing the honour.
Never do, yep.
And what about culture? You know, like there is often a headquarter culture, a corporate culture at headquarters. And then you can have a type of regional cultures, like Japan is a country with a very specific culture, like every country has a specific culture, of course, but how do you build a culture here, like a Thyssenkrupp culture here amongst the team?
I tell them we are a German headquartered company operating in Japan with a Japanese team. So we try, and this is, I believe, the goal of everyone, to pick the best parts of both cultures, combine them, and by this becoming stronger. Of course, it's not possible always, but I tell them we are not a fully traditional Japanese company, and don't rely on the seniority aspect and on the hierarchy and on whatever you might expect from a traditional conservative Japanese company. But we are also not the pure German company. So you have to find a mixture, and this is also depending who are your closest collaborators here in the team. What can be done, and where they give you a sign and say, "Hey, be careful, this is not working here," and so on. So it has to be a mixture, and it has to fit to all of them. You cannot do something completely against headquarter. This will not go for a long time. And on the other side, the Japanese cannot always continue in their way as they have done it during the past 100 years. So they also have to change. It has to be somewhere in the middle.
And do you have any particular drivers that you use to build culture? Because you've got, in your case, you've got different departments or merged companies which are now coming under one umbrella. Which again, how do you make like one Thyssenkrupp culture of all of that mix? Do you have any things you've used that have been effective to do that?
We introduced, and this is nothing new, of course, a bonus system where everybody once a year is getting a financial bonus. And this is based on 3 to 5 goals which are predefined, which are 1 year in advance discussed and mutually agreed. And from these goals, maybe 2 of them are pure individual goals, where I say you have to increase your sales amount by so and so many %, which you can influence individually. And others, and this is supported by headquarters, are so-called company goals. So if there is something important, and this could be to introduce blue as a new corporate color and forget about all the other colors, pink and yellow and what else, or to introduce certain company values, can be part of these review of this goal setting and review process.
Right, you put it back into the system, basically.
Yep.
If you were going to give some advice to someone who is going to be sent to Japan, they're overseas now, they've been told, okay, you are going to Japan, you're going to run our operation there, what would be some piece of advice you'd give that person?
First of all, listen. Look with your own eyes how it's done until now.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, or I cannot imagine any business which is completely new to Japan. And I'm sure there is already a Japanese solution for whatever business model you are coming in here is available. And I think this is always important to understand how was it done in the past. And we all know Japan is a G7 country, not a developing country. So I'm rather sure that they will have a solution here on this island which is fitting to the requirements here on the island. So you have to understand this, because this is always your hidden competition. Whatever you are bringing in new, you always have to compete against this existing solution, which is already on the market, to understand this. And then listen to your team, regardless how big this is, what is their experience, where do they see opportunities to change something, to introduce something new. And then based on this one, setting up a strategy, a plan, a concept, however you call it, and communicate this not 1 time, but 2 times, 3 times, and maybe even 4 times until really everybody understood it. So it's very important here to have a guidebook, a manual, something like this. They always like to see some written procedure on how to do it. And might be a mistake of especially native speakers when even speaking faster to say, okay, let's make a town hall and I will give you the directions, talking for 30 minutes, making a great speech most likely, but half of the room is not understanding it, and afterward they are going out and say, so what do I take out now? Where do I have to start? What is my role in this common goal, and so on. So here you have to make really sure that everyone in your team is understanding what you want to do, and it's best to write it down or to make an easy drawing or whatever, so that you are sure that everybody can take it back home and learn it by heart.
Digest it. What other advice would you give them?
I think we discussed this already. It's easy to convince, to influence, to bring on your side the very young employees, which are rather new in the company. Most likely their language skills are also better, so you can communicate in English with them. And it's also most likely you will have a good understanding with the existing top management, because they understand strategy, they understand financial figures, something has to be changed, and they do have an understanding. The difficult part, and I have no solution on this one, is the middle management, who already had several service years, who already reached a certain position, certain benefits. They have already the big desk and the flower pot next to them. And if you then start and say, well, I'm now starting with flexible teams, and we rearrange the organization every morning depending on the projects and so on. These are, for me, the bottlenecks here, which are not excited to change anything, to give up anything of their already earned for many years benefits, and to change anything which will bring them out of their comfort zone. Though the young guys, normally easy, because they are young and they are eager to change something, to do something. The absolute top management, yes, as well. They understand the figure, they understand the market needs, they see that the world is changing. But the traditional middle management here is quite often a hurdle.
So how do you deal with those people? You're talking to your top people, your direct reports, and probably you might have some interaction with the younger people, but you probably don't have that much interaction with the middle management. So what's the solution there?
You might have to go for some real hire and fire decision. As difficult as it is here in Japan, but if you want to change something, and there are certain positions who are opposing, either directly, which is very seldom, but indirectly by really not making sure that your orders are given into the organization, talk to them 3 times, or I don't know how many warnings are necessary, but if this does not fit, because these people are not in a position to change and to follow what you are saying, you have to replace them, shift them away, and make sure that they are not stopping your intentions. Of course, as I said in the beginning, listen to them. If they have concerns, if they have objections which are reasonable, take 10 minutes and think about it if they are really reasonable, if there is a way to overcome. But if you have the feeling they just want to protect their kingdom or their department or whatever, sorry.
Should they learn Japanese?
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. On the other side, you have to be, and now we are coming back again on this communication and making sure that your intentions, your targets, your goals are understood. The Japanese language is not very precise. And you can see this in legal contracts, but you can also see this in expressing your wishes, or your goals, not wishes, your goals, what you would like to reach. So for me, and regardless German or English is same, you can be impolite or very direct, let's put it like this, but you can be exact to the point in terms of time, in terms of goal you would like to reach, who has to do what, and not these ambitious, the team should consider and some goodwill and spring is coming and
extremely vague.
Yeah.
Makes a point. And so, we've had a long discussion about leading in Japan. Is there anything we haven't discussed, anything we haven't covered you think we should talk about?
I think it would be interesting, and I'm in no way an expert to turn this whole interview around to see what do Japanese people think if they are going abroad and if they have to run operations, let's say in Germany or in Australia or whatever. So
the thing about that is that very rarely happens. You think about it like...
But why?
Why? Yeah, exactly. And you often have this dilemma that organizations see their full resource as elements that can be moved around where they need leadership. So, for example, we need a leader in Brazil. So
Yep.
we're going to send Suzuki-san to run Brazil. But you don't run across too many Japanese running organizations outside of Japan unless they're Japanese companies who've sent their expats into those companies to run that operation until they can get some local leader
Yep.
to take over. So it doesn't happen all that often, does it really?
Correct. I'm aware of a few trading companies who are quite active in sending out people. But the country itself, and this is also a challenge for me now coming back and integrating Japanese stuff into international teams, we do promote and we do offer certain assignments for people working all over the world, going into a different country, getting some experience, and then coming back. And this can be an administrative function, this can be an IT function, CFO, but also an engineer. And this is a real challenge for me to find a young, promising employee, or it must not be young, a mid-career employee who is willing, taking his family or her family, and go to Germany. I succeeded actually only 2 times so far. So offering this, it's a reasonable expat package, and to say, well, you are now going to headquarter, you will work in a team. Our corporate language is English anyway, so no problem. You do not have to speak German. It helps, but it's not necessary. And for this project, I would like you to represent the Japanese side. So the person itself is sometimes even interested, but then going back to the family, having the school problem here, there is no Japanese school, and I will go alone. I said, is this really working? Yeah. I go alone, and then I fly 4 times per year back and forth for the family and so on. But it's really difficult to convince here people out of my team to take an overseas assignment.
Yeah, and that's schooling, that's language, that's, comfort zone. It's a whole bunch of things, isn't it?
It's dangerous, security, safety.
Yeah, that's another
okay,
part.
during the last 2 years it was impossible anyway, but also before all kinds of I have to talk to my family. So it's a pity. It's a pity.
No.
Because this would solve the problem of not being heard. If such a person is not only overseas on a business trip, which everybody likes to do, but on a longer assignment for 2 years or so, they could become really part of the team. They could build up a much better network inside our company and having much better connections. That's what I'm benefiting from, that I know now after nearly 20 years in Thyssenkrupp, a lot of people and know where you can place an informal call to get a certain information and do it. So.
Yeah, they're missing that.
And they are missing this opportunity.
Yeah. So what's your definition of leadership?
It's a good question. I would say it's the skill to motivate a group of people to reach a common goal.
Nice. Very succinct. Well, on that note, thank you very much, Nikolaus. It's always great to see you, and thank you for joining me today.
Yes.
And please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.